So yeah, as the title says, I'm literally going to be going over the entire new My Hero Academia movie, World Heroes Mission. And this long summary is provided to us by Audrey, who is Aitai Kimochi on Twitter, who I think lives in Japan, so that's how she was able to watch the movie and give us this summary. She's great, and you really should follow her on Twitter. She's like one of the backbones of the My Hero community. And one more thing, I haven't seen the movie either. I've only seen like the trailers, and I honestly haven't even read this yet, so we're going to be reacting to it together. So let's get into it. The movie starts off with Howitzer committing an act of terror and bombing a bunch of people to remove their quirks. This also causes their quirks to explode, killing a ton of civilians. This cuts to everyone already at their internships around the world. So we saw this much in the trailer, and I don't know if she's going to explain what Howitzer is, but it's implied that there's some kind of like quirk singularity cult. Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki are wearing their cool new outfits and in the plane with Endeavor and Burnin, as well as a few other pro heroes. They jump out of the plane and make their way to one of Humorizer's hideouts in Ocean. The other internship groups are shown. Tokyo, Japan, there's Kirishima, Tetsu Tetsu, Amajiki, Jiro, Shoji, Fat Gum, Cementos, and Present Mike. While in Cairo, Egypt, there's Mineta, Kaminari, Seto, Shiozaki, Edgeshot, Mount Lady, and Kamui Woods. And in Paris, France, there's Ochako, Suyu, Nejiri, and Ryuku. In New York, there's Tokoyami, Hawks, Ojiro, Sato, Shishida, and Shota. And in Singapore, there's Yayorozu Setsuna, the magician pro hero whose name I forgot. I guess she's talking about Majestic here, and also reminding us that this movie takes place before the war arc. Everyone's listening to the news about Humorizer's attack. They all prepare to fight the different factions of Humorize. As each pro hero internship is dispatched, Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki enter the Humorize building. The Hero Association is watching the progress of the different divisions, and All Might is with the Hero Association overseeing the teams. Hawks reports on what's going on. There's a lot of action scenes during the first 10 minutes of the movie, showing the different pro heroes fighting in the different countries. Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki's new suits look super cool as they take down the villains. Amidst the fighting, a guy with an eye patch runs away from the Humorized building in Otheon carrying a metal suitcase. The contents of the suitcase are unknown, but the man is very nervous as he tries to run as fast as he can. The movie shows a kind of anime opening featuring all of the internship teams. They are featured with Otheon first, France, America, Egypt, Singapore, then Japan. The rest of the class shows up. Ashido, Koda, Aoyama, and Hagakure show up, but they're not in the movie. Cut to the scene of the Otheon slums, which look really colorful and beautiful. Roddy is introduced with his two siblings, Lolo and Lala. Roddy is looking for work since they live in a really run-down place. He goes to the local bar called Stanley's Bar, run by Stanley. Stanley doesn't give him work, and Roddy leaves the bar. He borrows Stanley's bike as he does, though, which makes Stanley mad. He then rides the bike downtown to the shopping district. That's not borrowing, that's just stealing. Deku and Todoroki are walking down the shopping district holding a bunch of groceries. Todoroki explains that this is one of the busiest areas in the city, and Bakugo is behind them complaining about why they need to do shopping while on an internship. Suddenly, there's a robbery at the bank in the shopping area. The two villains carry a metal suitcase full of gems as they try to run away. Todoroki and Bakugo are on their tail as they try to capture them, but they use their quirks while doing so. Roddy just so happens to be loitering around in one of the alleyways, and when one of the villains drops the suitcase, he conveniently picks it up and tries running away too, but Deku chases after Roddy and asks him to return the suitcase. Roddy's bird distracts Deku as Roddy runs away on the rooftops of the district. This scene looks amazing, combining CGI and hand-drawn animation while he runs across the rooftops, and the camera work is so well executed here. While Deku is chasing Roddy, the scene cuts to an insane high-speed chase on the highways near the ocean, and the guy with the eye patch is driving crazily as he's being chased by a villain, Barros, the lady who uses her fingers to form a bow and shoots tracking arrows. Barros tries to take the metal suitcase from the eye patch dude, and the CG and animation here is literally insane, way more intense than Hero's rising high-speed car chase. Barros fires arrows that make the car explode and go off-road. The suitcase falls out of the car, and at the same time, Roddy happens to accidentally drop the suitcase he was holding. He then picks up the metal suitcase and continues to run away from Deku. Suddenly, a bunch of police cars surround Roddy, and the police tell him to stop as he is a wanted criminal. Roddy said he didn't do anything and tries to run away, but Deku then drops in front of him, and the police surround Deku instead. Before this scene happens, Deku chased Roddy into a subway station. They fight over the suitcase, and the suitcase opens to show nothing but a few documents and papers. Roddy is disappointed because he thought there were jewels inside. Deku apologizes to Roddy as he thought that Roddy was the one who was stealing jewels from the bank. Roddy takes this opportunity to run away, but then he gets surrounded by police. That's when Deku comes in and uses his quirk to help he and Roddy escape the police. There's a funny part in the subway where Deku asks Roddy to show him what's in the suitcase. Roddy says he will do it if Deku pays up. Deku asks with a serious face, "How much?" Roddy says 10,000 euros, and Deku says with a really serious face, "That's too expensive." Back to escaping from the police, Deku uses his black whip like Spider-Man while holding Roddy and uses it to propel them through the buildings and onto a bridge that looks like the Golden Gate Bridge. Otheon is kind of a mix between San Francisco and Rome. That sounds pretty cool actually. It's a mixture I never would have thought of. They get to the bridge and Barros is on their tail and shooting her tracking arrows. This scene is freaking awesome. The CG and animation work is legit insane here, coupled with Deku's black whip quirk, which he has apparently mastered pretty well to use it fully. Deku's grip on Roddy loosens accidentally as he uses his black whip and Roddy falls down. Deku saves him by grabbing him as they both fall into the water below. Barros can't fire her arrows while they're underwater, so she retreats for the time being. Endeavor receives word from Clairvoyance about what happened to Deku. The news then turns on showing the scene where Deku was surrounded by the police, and although it's a misunderstanding, apparently Deku is wanted for mass murder. We knew this from the trailer as well. The mass murder that is referenced is what happened in the beginning when Humorize used the quirk bomb thing to kill a bunch of civilians. The man who was running away with the suitcase was probably the person they wanted, but they framed Deku instead. Todoroki and Bakugo watch the news and are confused what is going on. Todoroki said that he has tried calling Deku, but Deku is not picking up his cell phone. Just as he says that, he receives an incoming call from Deku. Deku says they got attacked by a villain and are currently in the middle of nowhere. Todoroki asked what the heck happened as he explains what he's seeing on the news. Deku is shocked. Todoroki tells Deku to run away and take out the battery of his phone in case the civilians or the police can track them. All Might sees the news of Deku being wanted for murder too and is baffled by what is going on. Kaminari says there must be a mistake. Ochako in Paris is watching the news too, and she says she doesn't believe it one bit. Tsuyu says there must be some ulterior motive for this framing. Ryukyu says they'll be okay since Endeavor can definitely help. Roddy gets mad at Deku that he somehow got caught up in the mess and is now an accomplice in this mass murder. He says they should just confess and give the suitcase to the police as the case has something to do with that. Deku says that's not a good idea right now and the only thing they can do is just run away. Roddy gets disguises for them. Deku wears a beige fisherman hat, brown overalls, and a light green polo shirt. Roddy wears a white hoodie with cargo shorts. They try to hitch a ride on a bus, but since they don't want to be recognized, Roddy says that they need to stay on top of the bus and hitch a ride for free. Deku feels bad and uses his air smash to throw 2 coins into the bus coin slot as they catch the ride. Alright Deku, you don't have to be Tanjiro all the time. Endeavor is at Otheon's police headquarters and talks to the chief policeman to clear the charge for Deku. However, the policeman refuses to budge. Endeavor storms out of the room frustrated and the policeman turns around and puts his hand over the Humorize book. Ooh. The police chief is in cahoots with Humorize, so that's why the charges for Deku persist. Todoroki and Bakugo are waiting at the Pro Hero area and Todoroki mentions that the guy who got caught in the car chases is unconscious so they can't question him. The guy is definitely from Humorize though, but as the man is currently in the hospital and unconscious, they don't have any leads. He then gets a message from Deku that reads, "When it's dark, there's strawberries in the fridge." Clairvoyance says this must be some kind of coded message, and Todoroki realizes that the first hiragana of each word spells out Clade, which Todoroki deciphers is the country Deku is currently in. Todoroki would fit right into the battle anime community here. Todoroki grabs Bakugo by the arm and says he's got to come with him as they have to find Deku. Bakugo tells Todoroki, "Don't tell me what to do," and complains as he follows him. Deku and Roddy get off from the bus at a random neighborhood. Roddy uses a payphone to call Stanley to ask him if he could go home to his siblings to tell them that their brother won't be home for a while. Stanley says, "No," since Roddy is wanted for murder. Roddy gets mad and hangs up. Scene cuts to Todoroki and Bakugo riding a train and they're in casual clothes. Todoroki wears a blue shirt, black pants, and white gray shoes. Bakugo wears a black dress shirt, inner gray shirt, red pants, and orange/black shoes. Scene goes back to Deku and Roddy as they seek refuge in a deserted barn. As they fall asleep, Roddy thinks about his past. His family was actually very rich, and Roddy always had a fondness for airplanes as their father was an engineer. The house they lived in was a huge mansion, but their mother was not in the flashback. Roddy's father gifted him a very complex puzzle key that he tried to solve and unlock. Roddy has trouble solving it, so his father helps him. The puzzle unlocks to show a pendant. The pendant is one that Roddy currently still has with him, which has a picture of him and his two siblings. However, one day, his father suddenly disappeared. Apparently, he joined Humorize, leaving Roddy and his siblings to fend for themselves. Alright, here we go. The house got vandalized as the neighbors thought they were traitors for being part of Humorize, and Roddy and his siblings were forced to move to the poorer areas of the city. Back to the present, Roddy decides to turn himself in and give the suitcase back. While Deku is sleeping in the barn, Roddy quietly takes the suitcase and meets up with one of the villains. Roddy's bird tries to stop him, but he ignores the bird and goes to contact the villain. This thing is less of a bird and more of like a literal Pokemon. The bird tries to wake up Deku, and when he does, he realizes that the suitcase is gone. Roddy is outside meeting up with the humorized villain, but instead of ensuring his safety, the villain turns on him and starts attacking him. The villain's quirk makes him turn into an Oni-looking monster, and he strikes Roddy. However, Deku uses his Smash Air Force to knock the villain away. Suddenly, Barros turns up and shoots an arrow at Roddy, and Deku throws himself in front of Roddy and he gets shot. Deku starts bleeding and staggers, but luckily the arrow hit the smartphone in his front pocket in his overalls. He and Roddy then run away and seek refuge in a cage nearby. Deku patches himself up with bandages and they sit by a fireplace. Roddy asks Deku why he saved him from the arrow. Deku says that if someone's in a pinch, it's a hero's job to try and save them. He wants to save them. Deku talks about wanting to be like All Might. Roddy says he's very different than Deku. Roddy mentions he doesn't think too far into the future, he just needs to take care of what's in front of him. He needs to take care of his siblings. Deku then explains how heroes have to go through a lot, and he has flashbacks of scenes from season 1 through 5. The flashback goes by quickly, but it has a scene of Deku being carried by Shoji, Deku, Ida, and Kirishima saving Bakugo, and ends with Ochako hugging Deku to stop the Black Whip Quirk from going crazy from the joint practice exam. Roddy looks like Deku's words touched him, and they formally introduce each other as they never told each other's names up until this point. They even leave the cave, and Roddy jumpstarts a car that he borrows and drives them away. As Roddy is driving, he explains that his mom died when his sister was born, his dad disappeared with Humorize, and he's been responsible for taking care of his siblings and making ends meet. There is a beautiful road trip montage that lasts for about 5 minutes with Asian Kung Fu Generation song Flower playing in the background. It shows Deku and Roddy together on the road trip. It has some really amazing landscapes. It's a very peaceful montage. The montage ends as they get closer to one of Humorize's headquarters. Just as they arrive near the cliffside, Barros finds them and tries firing at them again. Humorize just wants the case. Roddy tries running away but hangs on the cliff, and Deku can't catch him. Roddy starts falling, but thankfully Todoroki's ice saves him and creates a wall of ice that he slides down from midair. Deku recognizes this ice as Todoroki and calls out to him. Bakugo comes using his quirk to fight Barros. Todoroki and Bakugo are wearing their casual clothes, still as they fight Barros and other villains of Humorize. Bakugo propels himself onto the top of the helicopter that Barros is in. She tries to fire at him, but realizes she is out of arrows and it's futile. She realizes that there's no way for her to escape this as Bakugo fires up his explosion, and she says an final oath to Humorize as she jumps out of the helicopter and into the deep ravine. She does not appear in the movie again after this scene. They regroup as the helicopter explodes in the air, and Todoroki was able to keep the suitcase safe. Deku notices that the case has a small part protruding from the bottom. It turns out that the part is the same type of the puzzle key that Roddy's dad gave him as a kid. Roddy takes the key and figures out how to open the puzzle. Within the puzzle is a type of key and an SD card. Humorize then decides that they will carry through with a plan to set off bombs around the world within 2 hours. People all around the world are in a panic as they try to escape from the bomb areas, but they're not sure where exactly the bombs are planted. Each city is full of mayhem and traffic jam. Shibuya is in a crisis. Hiroshima, Tetsutetsu, and Amajiki try to clear out the citizens of Shibuya and move cars and also inspect them for bombs. Jiro and Shoji are nearby listening to instructions from the Hero Association on what to do. People in Paris are also freaking out. Oshako and the others are also helping clear traffic jams and moving people to safety. They are all trying to look for bombs planted in each city. Hawks and Tokiyami are also in New York, flying over the city to survey it. Yaoyorozu and Setsuna are also helping out in Singapore. Mount Lady and company are in Egypt trying to seek out the bomb and calm the citizens. Pro-hero Salam is literally a 2D hieroglyph. Back in Clade Country, Deku, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Roddy are at a waiting room of some sort and use a computer to open the contents of the SD drive. There's so much data in the SD card along with many different folders. They watch the video, which is a recording of the dude with an eye patch. The guy explains that he wants to save the world and asks the heroes to help save the world by stopping Humorize. He explains what Humorize's goal is, to cleanse the world of quirks, which they consider a disease. The suitcase contains the key that can stop the bombs from going off. However, they need to go to the main Humorize headquarters in order to be able to use the key to deactivate the bombs that are already set to detonate within 2 hours. Bakugo is able to look into the files to pinpoint the location of the headquarters, but they find that it's more than 400 kilometers away. Roddy says no problem and borrows a plane, which he uses to fly them to the location. Yeah, once again stealing. While on the plane that Roddy borrowed, Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki gear up in their normal costumes. Bakugo is not wearing the winter costume, he is just normal hero costume. They prepare for battle. Meanwhile, Endeavor and his team manage to find the bomb. The rest of the hero teams around the world are trying to find all the bombs. However, as they do, Humorize factions appear everywhere and they try to stop each pro-hero agency from stopping the bombs. Fight between heroes and villains break out. Roddy and company arrive at the main Humorize base. Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki jump out of the plane and immediately are shot by Humorize, who fights with guns and most of them are quirkless. The action sequence here is freaking awesome. Bakugo is approached by two twins who have razor whip hands. Todoroki holds Deku by the waist to steady him as they rush forward using Todoroki's ice, and Deku simultaneously uses One for All to break through the front door of the Humorize headquarters. As they get further into the Humorize building, they are approached by more and more villains. Todoroki says that he will stay to fight them off and tells Deku to go further in. Todoroki has a solo fight with a huge villain. They fight and fall into a rushing river. The fight between Bakugo and the twins escalates, and there's a ton of blood as the twins slash through Bakugo's arms, clothes, and even stab him in a way that looks like how Shigaraki stabbed Bakugo in Chapter 285. There's a lot of blood in Bakugo's fight. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Miraculously, Bakugo survives all of this, and he uses his grenades to destroy a pillar that crumbles on top of the twins. Just when he thought the fight was over, the twins use some quirk-boosting serum and inject it into themselves, going Super Saiyan. Bakugo looks exhausted, but he still fights the two superpowered villains. The next scene is Deku approaching the main villain, Flecked Turn. He tries to fight him, but Fleck's quirk is that he can reflect back any action done against him. Oh wow, so he has like 7 deadly sins full counter, which I always kind of had issues with, because it's basically like a broken ability that I think needs to be nerfed somewhat. This means that anytime Deku uses One for All, Fleck's quirk causes One for All to go back at Deku, hurting him badly. Deku gets up and says he can still fight. The main room where Flecked Turn is standing in has camera footage of all his classmates around the world fighting too. He sees everyone fighting and getting hurt by the villains. He says each of his classmates' names as they appear on the screen. He knows they're all doing their best to stop the bombs. He says he needs to protect everyone's smile. He tries to think of a way to win. Just run up to him and like choke him or something, right? Deku gets up and staggers towards the villain, but he's weak and falls over. But Roddy appears and catches him by the waist. Roddy says he can finish this as he has the key with him. Roddy explained that Humorize actually took his dad hostage to force him to make bombs. It is his duty to stop them. Roddy approaches the villain. In the previous battle with Deku, the villain explains that because of his quirk, he can never hold or touch anyone. So as a child into adulthood, he grew up alone because his quirk hurt those he touched. Okay, never mind about the choking thing. I guess his quirk is just perpetually on. The villain explains that he and Roddy are quite similar. They both have something they want to protect. In this villain's case, it is to protect the purity of the world without diseases, called quirks, as he views his own quirk as a disease. The villain asks Roddy to give him the key, and at first it looks like Roddy is going to hand it over. Deku tried to reach him but fails. As soon as Roddy hands over the key, he flicks it into the air and the bird catches the key. This gives Deku a chance to land a hit on the villain. The villain is furious and attacks Roddy by directing lasers to fire at him. The lasers shoot right through his chest and Roddy starts bleeding profusely. Roddy has a flashback to where he tells Deku what his quirk is, which he thinks is kind of lame. Roddy's quirk is that the bird is actually a manifestation of his inner feelings. It's hard for him to lie, as the bird usually gives away his feelings. What? This is by far the most out there quirk I think I've seen so far. Meanwhile, Bakugo looks as if he's fighting a losing battle with two twin villains. They attack him viciously, and his eyes even start bleeding, with his right eye being completely bloodshot. He then discards his gauntlets and uses them as bombs to distract them. Bakugo then creates a whirlwind of explosions and uses the bombs to detonate the entire building on top of the two villains. Bakugo then creates a whirlwind of explosions and uses the bombs to detonate the entire building on top of the villains. He then lands a final Howitzer impact attack on the villains and miraculously defeats them. This entire scene was executed with animation. Very excited to see the Howitzer impact. It's my favorite move from Bakugo, and unfortunately we don't really get to see it that much. Todoroki, on the other hand, is still fending off the villain underwater, and he's slowly losing consciousness as he runs out of breath. He then sees that the river is rushing towards an opening in the cliff. The two then fall out of the river from a waterfall. Todoroki uses his ice and fire combined to create a crazy kind of attack, and he uses the fire to envelop the villain. However, the villain projects himself and grows bigger, and he swallows the fire and Todoroki along with it. However, Todoroki is able to do some crazy fire and ice attack that gives him an opening to punch a hole right through the villain, effectively defeating him. This entire sequence is so very Nakamura, and it blew my mind. As Deku is fighting the villain, Roddy makes his way slowly to the control room to stop the bombs with the key in his hand. However, he's bleeding and he leans onto the wall as blood streaks the entire wall as he walks. He's almost at the bomb detonator control, and he faints right before he's able to put the key in to stop the bomb. The scene then cuts to Endeavor, then Hawks and Tokoyami fighting, then Fat Gum, Shoji, and Jiro. Endeavor is flying the gigantic bomb away from the city. Shoji and Jiro are listening for locations of where the bombs are and tell Fat Gum that there are 2 more bombs they need to find in Tokyo. Kirishima is fighting the villains and says, "I will never give up. Isn't that right, Bakugo?" Scene then cuts to Paris, where Tsuyu and Ochako are fighting. Ochako uses her zero gravity on herself to try to get the bomb away and says, "I will never give up, just like Deku." Kaminari is fighting villains alongside Mineta and Sero, and he says Deku and the others will never give up, so we won't either. The scene cuts to Yaoyorozu as she and Setsuna are also fighting villains and say, "We will never give up." Deku can see all of his friends on the TV screens in the control room with the villain. He says to the villain that heroes never give up, and that's why they are heroes. Deku says that the villain's quirk is also wearing down as they continue to fight. Deku is animated doing the one move that honestly looks like he had transcended to another dimension. The climax fight is so insanely epic. Way more epic than what I had read in the light novel yesterday. It looks kind of like his fight with Overhaul, but even crazier. However, the fight in Heroes Rising with Bakugo and Deku was way more epic than this fight, although this fight against Flecht was pretty mind-blowing. Deku then lands the finishing blow with a United States of Smash. Whoa! Alright! I did not expect that. I am so on board with seeing Izuku use the United States of Smash. Wow, I didn't even think of that. He then runs towards the control room and has 10 seconds to stop the bomb. As he runs, it shows All Might watching, Bakugo unconscious, Todoroki unconscious, and just as time runs out, the bomb suddenly stops. Endeavor was midair with the bomb in his hands. We then see that the person who actually stopped the bomb was the bird. Deku then holds Roddy gently as Roddy is bleeding out. Deku assures him that they will take him to the hospital as soon as possible. Deku grabs Roddy's hand and Roddy asks if they saved the world. Deku says Roddy and the bird, and his name is Pino, saved the world. And Roddy laughs and cries saying, "Wow, I guess I'm kind of cool then, huh?" Deku laughs and cries with him as he holds him in his arms. Oh, Deku. Scenes from around the world are shown in a kind of montage with humorized followers getting arrested. Bakugo and Todoroki's on a cot getting blood transfusions. You see Ojiro and Sato briefly with Tokoyami and Hawks. The scene then cuts to the heroes in Egypt, Singapore, and then Roddy and Deku in the hospital bed. Bakugo's bed is across from Deku's, and Recovery Girl is giving him a kiss on the cheek. Todoroki is in patient's clothes and he's standing by the window. Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki are at the airport and about to leave. Roddy comes in crutches to see them off. Bakugo, Todoroki, Endeavor, and Burden go on ahead. And in my notes, I especially wrote, "Holy crap, Burden is in casual clothes without a mask on. She's so pretty." Deku's flight is leaving soon. Roddy thanks him. The bird is crying. Deku gives Roddy a big ol' hug, and Roddy hugs him back. Roddy says to Deku, "Man, please don't ever come back here." But you can see that he's smiling and teary. The end of the movie shows Roddy going back to Stanley's to work a proper job, and he helps out at the bar as a waiter. There is then a montage of the credits showing the kids back in UA dormitory from the internships. Ida, Ashido, Aoyama, Hagakure, and Koda welcome them home. Ida approaches Deku and Ochaku and they start talking. Ashido is chatting with Mineta, Yaoyorozu, and Jiro. Hagakure is hanging out with Ojiro, Sato, Todoroki, Tokoyami, and Kodo. Kirishima pushes a reluctant Bakugo and groups up with Kaminari and Sero. Mirio has his arms around Nejiri and Tamaki. Aizawa appears with some Mentos and present Mike. All Might and Deku shake hands under the moonlight. The last montage is of Roddy studying to be a proper pilot and his siblings at school. The last scene is a pan of the locket with the picture of the three siblings as they sleep in one bed. Next to the bed is the kid drawing of Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki. The end. Alright, so that was the movie, and this was more of a workout than I thought it was going to be. Try reading out loud for like 45 minutes straight. It's quite the challenge. But I hope that you guys liked the video. Please follow Audrey on Twitter at itaikimochi. She's amazing, like I said. And if you liked the video, guys, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to go drink a gallon of water now.